More than 100 Ukrainian soldiers in Bakhmut have been exchanged with Russia, as Wagner claims to be handing over power to the Russian army.
The leader of a far-right extremist group has been sentenced to 18 years behind bars over the January 6th Capitol riot.
Greek MEP and former Vice President of the European Parliament Eva Kaili is allowed to remove an electronic bracelet and is freed from house arrest. Japanese police have arrested a man suspecting of killing 4 people, including 2 police officers, after being holed up in a farmhouse. More than 100 prisoners of war have been released in a major exchange with Russia, according to a chief Ukrainian presidential aide, Andrei Yermak. The soldiers were captured fighting in Bakhmut, which Russia now says it has full control of, despite Ukraine's claim that it still has a small foothold in the embattled city.
Що про багатьох із цих 106 людей взагалі не було жодної інформації, вони вважалися безвісті, зниклими. Але ми їх знайшли. Повернули додому. Це мають пам'ятати всі на передовій, що більше російських полонених візьмемо, то більше наших людей повернемо.
The body of an American fighter has been handed over and returned. This as Wagner Group leader Yevgeny Prigozhin says that the handover of the city to Russian forces will be completed by the 1st of June. Russian troops have already started to replace Wagner units in the suburbs of the city, but the mercenary group's fighters still remain inside it. Meanwhile, Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko says the transfer of some tactical nuclear weapons from Russia to his country is underway. Washington has condemned the behaviour, saying that it is irresponsible of both parties.
Founder of the extremist group Oath Keepers, Stuart Rhodes, has been sentenced to 18 years in prison for his participation in the January 6th Capitol riots in Washington. After his sentencing, Rhodes claimed that he was a political prisoner, a sentiment that the U.S. district judge disputed, but his lawyer repeated.
There's no way that he was the leader or the director of what happened on January 6th. He was just a convenient target. The Oath Keepers were a convenient target. The DOJ looked at them and said, oh, here are the scapegoats of what happened on January 6th.
The sentence for seditious conspiracy was the longest handed out so far in more than 1,000 Capitol riot cases. In 2021, thousands of supporters of former US President Donald Trump stormed Capitol Hill in a violent attempt to keep him in power at all costs. At least 9 people died.
Thank you. My daughter is waiting for me, so I'm very happy that I will be with her in a bit.
Greek MEP Eva Kaili is on probation and without an electronic bracelet. The Belgian Federal Prosecutor's Office has lifted the house arrest imposed on the former Vice President of the European Parliament since last April, after she spent 4 months in prison. Kaili was arrested in December for her part in a corruption scandal involving the government of Qatar and MEPs. Both governments angrily deny playing any role.
15 people dead, some 20,000 displaced and livelihoods in tatters. These are some of the devastating effects of the floods in the Emilia-Romagna region in northern Italy. Alongside Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen saw the damage firsthand and offered her support to the victims.
L'Europa è con voi.
The Italian government has announced an emergency aid package of €2 billion, while von der Leyen has stressed the help needed.
It is very urgent to trigger the Solidarity Fund. It has a clear rule. There is a very small prepayment that will be done. It's standardized for every disaster the same, but then there needs to be the damage assessment so that we get a clearer idea about what could be our European contribution.
As stated by EU Commission President von der Leyen, the EU will remain by Italy's side during the emergency, and EU Commission President von der Leyen also confirmed that the EU will provide financial help to support the country as it deals with the emergency. But given that extreme weather events like this one are becoming more frequent in Europe, the EU will have to deal with them not just in Italy, but in other parts of Europe too. Giorgio Orlandi for Euronews in Bologna.
A recent influx of migrants from Africa and the Middle East attempting to enter Poland has sparked concerns in neighbouring Germany, causing some to call for a reintroduction of border controls along the country's shared border. But a spokesperson for the Polish border guard stressed that migrants who enter the EU come not only through Poland.
O tych osobach, które mówi strona niemiecka, to są osoby, które mają ślad białoruski lub ślad rosyjski. Migranci cały czas mają świeże wizy rosyjskie. Mamy też informacje od strony łotewskiej, od strony litewskiej, że sporo osób, które właśnie przekroczyły do nich granicę z Białorusi nielegalnie, byli w ośrodkach takich otwartych dla cudzoziemców. My w tym roku przy granicy polsko-litewskiej zatrzymaliśmy już 2 razy więcej migrantów niż rok temu o tej samej porze.
There are also many more migrants on the Polish-Belarusian border. Mikhail Wolny, a volunteer, is getting ready for another trip to the forest with humanitarian aid.
Obecnie, zwłaszcza po zimie, widać intensyfikację tego ruchu na pograniczu polsko-białoruskim. Na wiosnę tych interwencji jest po prostu sporo więcej. Nasza grupa w przeciągu ostatnich 24 godzin miała 4 takie interwencje. Widać też zwiększoną brutalizację ze strony służb granicznych obu państw, które właśnie ich konsekwencją jest większa ilość urazu, aktów przemocy, które mają miejsce w stosunku do osób uchodźczych.
Migrants try to jump over the wall that stands on the border, or choose more difficult, dangerous routes through rivers and swamps.
De mon pays, j'en ai pris l'avion jusqu'en Russie parce que les visas directs pour la France, c'est pas vraiment facile à avoir chez nous. Donc du coup, on prend toutes les routes possibles pour y arriver, avec tous les dangers possibles.
They're crossing the border on foot. They stay in the Polish forest in harsh conditions for days at a time.
J'ai quitté mon pays parce qu'il y a la guerre et il n'y a pas la stabilité. On est à la recherche d'une vie meilleure.
Despite the wall that Poland has built along the border, the migrant route through Russia and Belarus is still operational, and it doesn't seem that this situation will come to an end soon. Magdalena Hodownik from Kuźnica for Euronews.
Police have fired tear gas to break up a noisy protest by climate activists near the Paris headquarters of French oil giant TOTALENERGIES. Dozens of campaigners had gathered outside the building ahead of the company's annual general meeting. Scuffles broke out as police tried to move them away from the entrance. After several verbal warnings, the officers fired tear gas at the protesters. Similar actions by climate groups have taken place at other fossil fuel corporations recently, like Shell in London. A man suspected of killing 4 people, including 2 police officers, has been arrested following a siege at a farmhouse in central Japan. He had been holed up at the building, which belonged to his father, for several hours. Masanon Aoki is suspected of stabbing 2 people before opening fire with a hunting rifle on officers who arrived on the scene. Police say the 31-year-old possessed valid licenses for multiple hunting and air guns. Such incidents are relatively rare in Japan, which has very strict gun firearms controls.
Iran has unveiled what it says is its newest ballistic missile, in a move likely to increase tension with Israel and Western countries. Officials say the Khorramshahr 4 rocket has a range of 2,000 kilometres and can carry a 1,500-kilo warhead, putting Israel in range. They also released footage of what's claimed to be a successful test launch of the weapon. Iran developed its ballistic missile program partly in response to Western sanctions that prevent it from accessing modern attack aircraft.
Just 5% of the electorate voted for him in the first round of Turkey's presidential election. And yet far-right candidate Sinan Ogan could tip the balance if he sides with incumbent President Recep Tayyip Erdogan or his rival Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu. To win him over, the opposition candidate has multiplied his appeals and hardened his policies on the millions of Syrian refugees in Turkey.
Buradan ilan ediyorum, ben iktidara gelir gelmez tüm mültecileri evlerine göndereceğim. Nokta.
For months, they've been talking about inclusion, inclusivity, difference. You know, we're going to embrace everybody. You know, our table is open to everyone, etc., etc. And now, you know, within a space of less than 10 days, the CHP candidate and the party is veered sharply to the right.
But earlier this week, Ogan announced he was siding with Erdogan.
Seçimlerin ikinci turunda Cumhur İttifakı adayı Sayın Recep Tayyip Erdoğan'ı destekleyeceğimizi beyan ediyorum. Bize ilk turda oy veren seçmenlerimizi de ikinci turda Sayın Erdoğan'ı desteklemeye davet ediyorum.
The question remains, is another victory for Erdogan inevitable? Sinan Ogan ran on behalf of a party alliance. Now his former ally, the radical Ümit Özdağ, has decided to support the opposition. But there is no certainty he will receive the support of the far-right electorate.
We're going into uncharted territory. We've never seen the dynamics or the political dynamics of a runoff election before, right? So my hunch is that we may be overestimating the value of this sort of two small right-wing parties.
Whatever the outcome this Sunday, the far-right is shining a light on what they consider to be the hardest-hitting issues.